The air in the cemetery was thick and cloying, smelling of wet earth and excessive lilies. Adam and Charlie stood awkwardly beneath the gray, indifferent sky, their black suits feeling alien in the vast, open space. They were attending the funeral of Mrs. Eleanor Vance, mother to their old friend Jake, and locally notorious for her reclusive lifestyle and rumored darker inclinations. Jake Vance, usually a pillar of cold corporate success, looked utterly ruined. His expensive coat seemed draped on a skeleton, and his eyes were bloodshot and vacant. "Thanks for coming," Jake mumbled as the last mourners drifted away. His voice was raw, strained, and lacked its usual executive polish. "Of course, Jake. Your mother was—" Charlie trailed off, unable to finish the polite lie. Eleanor Vance was known less for her kindness and more for her intensely private life, her vast collection of occult literature, and the persistent, unsettling rumors of black magic that had followed her for decades. Jake didn't meet their eyes. "Look, I need to ask you something. I need you both to stay at the old house tonight." Adam frowned. "Jake, we drove 6 hours for this. We're heading back tonight. The generator job." "Forget the job," Jake pleaded, suddenly grasping Adam's arm with startling force. "I'll pay you double your standard fee, cash. Just stay. I need the house cleared before the executor takes inventory tomorrow, but I can't be there alone." Charlie shifted uncomfortably. "What's the problem? Is the plumbing failing?" "It's not the house," Jake whispered, his eyes wide with a profound, terrifying certainty. "It's her. It's her power. She was buried an hour ago, but I know some of her things, some of her work is still active in the house. I keep hearing it. Ever since she died, I hear the whispers." Adam, the Phixer, specializing in verifiable structural flaws, raised an eyebrow. "Whispers?" "Yes, faint, dry voices. They're telling me to go to the basement. They want me to unlock the safe she kept there. I know whatever she was doing, whatever she was involved in, it didn't die with her." Jake looked desperately from Adam to Charlie. "I need you to investigate, to shut it down. If anyone can find the structural flaw in this chaos, it's you two. Please, just clear the basement." Adam exchanged a wary glance with Charlie. The request was irrational, but Jake's terror was undeniably real. The sheer weight of the Vance family history, the darkness of Eleanor's reputation, added a cold gravity to the plea. "Fine," Adam finally conceded, pulling his peas out. "We'll secure the structural integrity of your peace of mind, Jake. But if we find a gas leak, we're calling the fire department, not an exorcist." Jake sagged in relief. "Thank you. God, thank you. The basement entrance is under the kitchen stairs, but promise me one thing. Don't open the iron safe." The Vance house was structurally sound, but spiritually poisoned. Adam and Charlie secured the perimeter, their initial skepticism rapidly dissolving as they moved through the meticulously maintained, yet profoundly unsettling rooms. The air inside was heavy, dry, and bore the faint, acrid smell of burnt herbs and stale perfume. Jake, too traumatized to lead, stood frozen in the foyer, repeating his mother's final rule: don't open the iron safe. Adam and Charlie started their search in the master bedroom, the epicenter of Eleanor Vance's life. They weren't looking for wiring faults. They were looking for the source of the whispers. They began to find the cachets almost immediately. Behind a loose wall panel in the master closet, Adam found the first one. It wasn't a standard safe or a lockbox. It was a rough velvet bag tied with coarse black thread. Inside, nestled amongst dried herbs and brittle feathers, were small, stylized voodoo-like dolls made of wax and cloth. Each doll was pierced multiple times with rusted steel pins. As Adam touched the cloth, a faint dry whisper seemed to hiss right from the fabric, too indistinct to form words, but clearly malevolent. Charlie, meanwhile, was checking the fireplace in the study. He pulled back the heavy brass grate and found the second cachet hidden in the false back of the chimney flue. This discovery was far worse. Lying on a bed of blackened, ash-covered sand were several small animal skulls and bones, cleanly dissected, and a collection of small, blood-stained ceramic vessels. The vessels were cold to the touch, and the dried residue within was thick, dark, and undeniably organic. "Adam, get in here," Charlie rasped, his voice tight with pure disgust. "This isn't folklore. This is forensics. She was actually doing this." The sheer extent of the sorcery was shocking. This was not the harmless collection of an eccentric old woman. This was the methodical, organized workspace of a practitioner of dark arts. They moved to the kitchen, following the increasing intensity of the faint, incessant whispering that seemed to emanate from beneath the floor. It was a constant, low, dry sibilance, calling them downward. Jake remained rooted in the foyer, but his eyes were now fixed on the kitchen's main floor. "It's there," he whispered, finally moving. "Under the stairs. That's where she told me to go." Adam knelt by the kitchen service staircase. Beneath the bottom step, concealed by a heavy custom-made wooden skirting board, was a barely visible seam. Adam ran his utility knife along the edge. The wood wasn't nailed. It was hinged. "Charlie, give me the pry bar." Adam inserted the flat end of the pry bar and pulled. The skirting board swung inward with a soft, protesting groan, revealing a dark, narrow cavity. It was not a storage space. It was a steep, uneven set of rough-hewn stone steps descending into profound blackness. The air that rushed out was freezing, heavy and metallic, carrying the intense, acrid smell of burnt sulfur and old iron. The whispering was now loud, dry, and undeniable, flowing up from the black void like the exhaust from a faulty engine, specifically instructing them to descend. They had found the structural flaw, the core hidden entrance to Eleanor Vance's domain. Adam switched on his heavy-duty headlamp and began the descent, Charlie right behind him. The stone steps were uneven, slick with damp, and coated in a fine, black dust that seemed to absorb the light. The air grew colder with each step, the acrid smell of burnt sulfur intensifying. The whispers, no longer faint, became a low, dry murmur, like sand shifting in a strong wind, speaking directly to Jake. Jake, despite his terror, was drawn by the sound. He followed Adam down, his face a mark of morbid fascination and dread. The basement wasn't a utility room. It was a vast, cavernous space, stretching into impenetrable darkness. The floor was packed earth, uneven and cold. The walls were rough-hewn stone, sweating with ancient damp. In the center, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of Adam's headlamp, stood a large, rusted iron safe. It was old, intricate, and emanated a faint, buzzing coldness. Adam's light swept the cavern. There was no light fixture, no sign of electrical wiring. This was not a structural failure he could fix. Then, from the absolute blackness at the far end of the cavern, they materialized. They weren't shadows. They were immense, solid, and terrifyingly real. Two colossal demonic entities. They rose from the packed earth with a silent, terrifying grace, their forms vast and indistinct in the heavy shadows, but their presence overwhelming. They were incredibly tall, easily 12 feet in height, their massive, powerful frames made of shifting, dark energy. Heavy, obsidian black horns curled from their heads, and their immense arms ended in cruel, razor-sharp claws. Their skin was the color of volcanic rock, constantly rippling with veins of malevolent, sickly green light. They were emitting thin tendrils of black smoke that coiled around them like living things, dissolving into the freezing air. The whisperings in Adam's head stopped. The entities spoke, not in whispers, but in deep, resonant voices that seemed to vibrate the very stone of the basement. "You have arrived, son of Eleanor," one of the entities boomed, its voice a low, guttural rumble that echoed through the cavern, its glowing green eyes fixed on Jake. "The ritual is complete. The offering is due." Jake gasped, his face draining of all color, rooted to the spot by the overwhelming demonic presence. "No, Mother!" The first entity moved with terrifying speed. Its immense clawed hand shot out, grabbing Jake by the neck with a brutal, crushing grip. Jake's feet left the ground, his body dangling helplessly in the demon's grasp. The entity brought its horned head close to Jake. With a sudden, savage motion, it delivered a traumatic bite to Jake's shoulder and neck area. There was no blood, but a sickening internal rending, a visible draining of light and life. Jake screamed, a high, piercing, agonizing shriek of pure, unspeakable agony. His body convulsed violently, his eyes rolling back in his head. He thrashed for a moment, then collapsed to the packed earth, writhing in silent, convulsive pain, clutching his neck. He was broken, his life force visibly draining. The second colossal entity, its black eyes burning with cold amusement, slowly turned its massive horned head toward Adam and Charlie. Its immense clawed hand slowly lifted, signaling their immediate, inescapable doom. The massive clawed hand of the second entity moved with terrifying casual speed, launching a kinetic blast of dark energy toward Adam and Charlie. "Run! Go!" Adam roared, shoving Charlie backward up the stone steps. They didn't wait to fight. They were technicians facing gods. Survival was the only option. They scrambled up the slick, rough human stairs, moving with panicked desperation. The entities pursued, their massive bodies dissolving into swift, terrifying columns of black smoke that flowed up the narrow staircase with unnatural speed. Adam reached the kitchen level first, turning to haul Charlie up the final steps. It was in that moment the Jinn struck. The first entity, now fully formed as a colossal horned presence in the cramped kitchen, unleashed a devastating blow of immense blunt force. Adam felt a crushing impact across his left shoulder and side, as if struck by a massive, unseen steel girder. He cried out, the pain blinding, and he was hurled against the kitchen counter, slamming into the granite with sickening force. Blood immediately welled up, pouring from a gash above his eye. The entities paused, colossal and triumphant in the cramped modern kitchen, blocking the only exits. Their dark, resonant voices boomed. "You cannot escape the binding. The sacrifice must be complete." Adam, dizzy and bleeding profusely, ignored the structural damage to his own body. His eyes were scanning, desperately searching for anything, a chemical, an electrical source, a structural flaw, anything to fight back against the overwhelming power. Then, through the haze of agony, Jake moved. Jake lay crippled on the basement floor, convulsing in agony, yet his mind had seized on the final desperate hope. He saw a forgotten silver trophy, a relic from his corporate past, lying near the rusted iron safe. With a monumental effort driven by the purest form of betrayal and despair, Jake crawled, his broken body dragging across the cold dirt floor toward the gleaming metal object. He reached the trophy, its metal cold beneath his trembling fingers. He lifted it slightly and threw the silver object with the last of his strength. The small, insignificant trophy struck the ankle of the colossal Jinn blocking the staircase. The effect was instantaneous and shocking. The immense dark entity shrieked, a horrifying, high-pitched noise of pure agony and defeat. The black smoke around its body recoiled violently, and the towering figure staggered backward, its massive, clawed hand clutching its ankle where the silver had struck. The Jinn was momentarily incapacitated, its physical presence sputtering. "Silver! It's silver!" Adam roared, the realization piercing the pain. He scrambled onto the kitchen floor, adrenaline replacing the blood loss. Charlie, his mind seizing on the desperate clue, immediately looked around the kitchen, a space Adam had ignored. His eyes landed on the old, exposed copper hot water pipes near the sink. Tucked beside the heavy copper, Adam had noticed unused piping earlier. Charlie snatched up a heavy, old, unused length of silver-plated utility rod left behind by a previous plumbing job. "I got something," Charlie yelled, his voice raw but surging with new purpose. The Jinn's shrieks of agony confirmed their only weakness. They had the only structural solution that could fight the demonic binding. "I got something," Charlie yelled, his voice raw but surging with new purpose. He brandished the heavy silver-plated utility rod, a cold, gleaming promise of defense against the terrifying, shrieking Jinn. The entities, recovering swiftly from the shock of the silver, were no longer screaming. They moved with terrifying, intelligent coordination. The Jinn that Jake had struck instantly turned, standing back to back with its immense partner, the two immense horned figures forming an impenetrable fortress of black smoke and rage in the center of the kitchen. They faced the two viable threats, Adam and Charlie. Charlie, ignoring the agony of his broken arm, used his good hand to swing the heavy silver rod defensively. The Jinn recoiled slightly from the pure anti-occult energy of the silver, but the movement was minimal. They learned instantly. Adam watched the coordinated defense through a haze of blood and pain. The Jinn were using their vast forms to cover each other's vulnerable points, the areas where the silver could effectively strike. Their movements were no longer chaotic, they were measured, lethal, and tactical. "Structural flaw," Adam's broken mind screamed. "Find the flaw." He realized the problem. The Jinn weren't protecting themselves from being struck. They were protecting the binding points that anchored them to this dimension. The silver wasn't lethal, it was disruptive. They were preventing the silver from breaking the core structural integrity of their manifestation. "Charlie, they're protecting their backs. You have to separate them," Adam roared, pushing himself off the counter despite the crippling pain in his side. He staggered forward, using the heavy aluminum stool to draw the entity's focus. The Jinn, however, were not fooled. They perceived Adam as the strategic threat, the mind trying to break their defense. As Adam took 3 staggering steps, the taller Jinn moved with blinding, unnatural speed. It didn't bother with a blunt, kinetic strike. It used its terrifying claw. The massive, razor-sharp talon lashed out in a silent, savage arc. Adam gasped, the world dissolving into a flash of white-hot pain as the claw ripped across his lower back and side. The blow was instantaneous, deep, and crippling. Adam felt the sickening tear of muscle and the immediate, gushing warmth of severe internal bleeding. He dropped to his knees, his hands scrambling uselessly to staunch the terrible flow of blood. The attack was precise and decisive. Adam was incapacitated, reduced to a bleeding, broken mess on the cold kitchen floor. The Jinn let out a triumphant guttural shriek that resonated through the house. The entities had neutralized the strategic threat. Now, only Charlie remained. The Jinn turned their colossal horned heads toward the terrified man holding the silver rod. Their coordinated attack resumed, their dark forms flowing toward the final piece of the structural defense. From the base of the staircase, Jake, still writhing in the pain of his spiritual wound, cried out, a raw, desperate, agonizing sound of utter helplessness. "Charlie, no! Run!" But Charlie, severely injured and now the sole line of defense, stood firm, the heavy silver rod his only shield against the 2 towering demons closing in for the kill. The 2 Jinn entities advanced, their black, horned forms filling the kitchen, their silence more terrifying than their screams. Adam lay bleeding on the floor, his vision blurring, his consciousness clinging to the razor's edge of absolute pain. He could hear Charlie's panicked, desperate fighting, the futile whang of the silver rod striking the solid air as the demons closed in. Structural flaw, find the flaw, they're back to back. Adam's mind, despite the catastrophic damage to his body, seized on the one terrifying truth. The demons weren't just coordinated, they were fused. Their power, drawn from Eleanor's binding ritual, relied on that shared protected core. To destroy one was to destroy both. With a monumental, agonizing effort, Adam crawled forward, ignoring the fire spreading through his lower side. His hand reached out, not for his useless wrench, but for the silver-plated utility rod that Charlie had dropped moments before when he was struck. His fingers closed around the cold, heavy metal. Charlie was backed against the wall now, screaming, his last desperate swing missing as the demons prepared their final lethal kinetic strike. "Charlie, get down!" Adam roared, the effort tearing a fresh wave of pain through his ribs. Charlie instinctively dropped just as the Jinn launched their attack. Adam used the brief opening. He scrambled to his knees, gripping the heavy silver rod with both hands. He didn't have the strength to swing it. He only had the strength for one single, final thrust. He launched himself forward, a final screaming act of self-sacrifice, aiming the sharp, clean end of the silver rod at the center of the first demon's back, the point where the entities were structurally linked. Adam's entire remaining strength, his rage, his fear, and his will to survive transferred into that single movement. The silver rod struck the first demon's back, and with a sickening, grinding sound of spiritual violation, it plunged deeply through its dark form, driven entirely by Adam's momentum. The result was cataclysmic. The 2 colossal horned entities let out a unified, terrifying, unnatural shriek, a high-frequency sound of pure, searing agony that echoed the breaking of ancient bonds. The sound was deafening, penetrating, and instantly reversed the flow of all dark energy. Their massive forms began to violently shimmer and dissolve. Within seconds, the black, towering figures collapsed inward. They didn't fall, they disintegrated, transforming into swirling columns of black, acrid smoke and fine black ash that spiraled upward before falling silently onto the kitchen floor. The colossal demons were gone. Adam immediately collapsed, the adrenaline leaving his body in a paralyzing rush of shock and pain. He lay prone beside the smoking pile of ash, the silver rod pinned beneath him. Charlie, though his arm was likely broken and his head throbbing violently, moved first. He crawled to Adam, his hand shaking as he desperately pulled the heavy silver rod free, then applied pressure to the gaping wound on Adam's back. "Adam, you have to move. Can you breathe? We need to stop the bleeding." Charlie's voice was hysterical, laced with pure survival shock. Adam slowly opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling. "Lungs are good. Ribs are structurally compromised. Get Jake." Charlie, struggling against his own severe injuries, moved to the staircase. Jake lay where he had fallen, silent, his body convulsing in minor spasms. The spiritual wound on his neck, though invisible, was the most devastating. "Jake, the safe," Charlie whispered urgently, helping him up. "We need to clear the evidence. Now, they might reform." Jake, though deeply traumatized, found a new, terrible focus. He ignored the pain and stared at the pile of black ash, his eyes burning with the realization of his mother's ultimate betrayal. He wasn't just grieving. He was cleaning up a crime scene his family had committed against the world. He moved with a frightening, methodical purpose.
"The residual energy," Jake rasped, his voice sounding dry and alien. "It's still here. We need to erase the ritual." He crawled back down the steps, ignoring his friend's protests, moving toward the iron safe. Using a small, tarnished key he pulled from his mother's concealed pocket, he unlocked the heavy vault door. Inside, he didn't find riches. He found only a collection of black, dried herbs, old parchment, and a single, ancient human tooth. Jake grabbed the horrifying contents and, using a shovel from a nearby cabinet, quickly scooped the black ash from the floor into a heavy canvas bag. Adam watched, pushing himself painfully against the counter, using a torn piece of his shirt to press against his bleeding side. He realized the immense cost of their survival. Jake was spiritually shattered, forced to bury his mother's occult sins. Charlie had severe physical trauma, and Adam was crippled. "We leave everything," Adam commanded, his voice strained but firm. "The house is compromised. We get to the truck, get to a hospital 50 miles from here, and we never speak the truth of what we saw." The entire event had been the ultimate structural failure, a confrontation between logic and ancient, consuming evil. They didn't win cleanly. They merely survived the first battle, carrying the crippling visible proof of their contact with the demonic. The house was defeated, but the malignant force that drove it was merely dispersed. They had minutes before the energy reformed. Escape was the only remaining structural objective. Adam, Charlie, and Jake moved with agonizing slowness, supporting one another, their bodies broken, but their resolve hardened by the sheer terror they had overcome. Jake carried the heavy canvas bag containing the ash and the cursed artifacts. Charlie, his arm immobilized, supported Adam's weight, helping him limp toward the front door. They left the kitchen a disaster zone, scorched, bloody, and silent, the powerful generator still roaring its lonely defiance in the shed outside. They moved through the dim, silent halls, past the spots where the voodoo dolls and animal bones had been hidden. The house, stripped of its demonic anchors, felt merely cold and desolate now. Getting Adam into the truck was a painful, complicated maneuver, but they managed it, Charlie grimacing as he jostled his broken arm. Jake secured the back, ensuring the canvas bag of ash was buried beneath blankets and tools, a toxic, terrible trophy. As Charlie drove them slowly and carefully away from the Blackwood estate, Adam leaned his head back against the cold window. The exhaustion was suffocating, but his mind remained terrifyingly clear. He reached back and touched the bandage Sarah had applied to his side wound. The pain was immense, but the wound itself was proof. The crippling blow, the razor-sharp laceration, was the physical consequence of encountering something beyond the structural flaws of brick and mortar. He looked over at Charlie, who was gripping the wheel with his good hand, his face pale and set. The survival was not a miracle, it was a matter of technical execution and a single fortunate vulnerability: the silver rod. The silver rod had worked. The very concept of a structural weakness, a countermeasure coded into the physics of the demonic, was the only thing that had saved their lives. Adam, the Phixer, had fought the supernatural with metallurgy. Jake spoke from the back seat, his voice hoarse and hollow. "The house is poison. I'm selling it. I'll take a loss, I don't care. Every book, every trace of her work, it gets incinerated. I won't let her bindings stay on this earth." The burden of the secret was visible in his eyes. He had lost his mother, his wealth, and his sanity, but he had survived to clean up the spiritual collapse of his family line. Adam knew Jake was right. The problem wasn't the house was the lockbox for the curse. The entity was dispersed, but the structure that attracted it was still standing, waiting for the next unsuspecting owner to trigger the ritual. They drove toward the dawn, leaving the silence and the secrets behind. Adam had survived a physical assault that no first aid kit could truly fix, and he carried the indelible knowledge that some structural failures require holy water and silver, not a wrench. He was alive, wounded, and burdened with a secret that would define every job he took from this moment forward. That basement is still sealed.
If I gave you the coordinates, would you dare go back? Tell me in the comments, should the Phixer ever return to that place?